Hey, welcome to week 3 of the NFL season. Can you believe it's already week 3? I feel like I'd be driving through Armagh a few weeks to go to Arizona for the Super Bowl. But right now, welcome into the Irish NFL show presented by Cassidy Travel. And also check out the Game Pass link in our bio. Michael McQuaid, Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, Mark Cockerell, a special guest to kick off the program tonight. Delighted to be joined by Carmen Vitali. Carmen, I think the last time we had you on the show was when uh, it was either when the Bucks won the Super Bowl or the season was about to start again, that Cowboys game. It's fantastic to have it back on again. Welcome in.
Yeah, it's been a while. There's been a job change since then, but ironically enough, I'm going back to Tampa tomorrow to check out the Bucks Packers game now, but as a NFC North reporter, so it's from the Packers lens, which is going to be very interesting for me.
Talk and obviously congratulations on the new job. It's fantastic. And can you maybe talk to people in Ireland, the UK, and Europe especially, and that follow the NFL and every team about your new role?
Yeah, I work for Fox Sports now, and I cover the NFC North. Fox Sports has now built out kind of their NFL writers, their NFL.com content team, and I was lucky enough to get hired to now cover the NFC North. I had moved back to Chicago, left the Bucks, and it just kind of worked out. And they were like, "Hey, you want to go cover the NFC North?" And this is the division that I grew up watching. I've lived outside Chicago when I was growing up, and I was a Bears fan through and through. And now I get to cover all 4 of the NFC North teams, and which has really meant the Packers. But I was up at Lambeau Field last weekend, and then this weekend I'm going down to Tampa to visit my old friends. But as they take on the Buccaneers and the Packers on Sunday, Fox's game of the week, it's a big deal. Really excited.
Yeah, certainly an interesting division, Carmen. When you took the job, did you think that the Detroit Lions would be one of the most exciting offenses in the 2022 NFL season to date?
Yeah, no, I can't say that I necessarily called that one. But I mean, listen, every team in this division is 1-1 right now. And it's very interesting, though, to see how those records are received. Right, the Bears are kind of like, oh, well, 1-1. If you would have told us before the season started that against the 49ers and the Packers we were going to be 1-1, nobody would have been sounding the alarm. Now, after as bad of a loss as it was to the Packers, they're a little bit iffy on it. And then the Packers, conversely, are like, are you kidding me? We're 1-1. Like we should be 2-0 going into this game against Tampa, which they're going to need to win, because if they don't win in Tampa, this is going to be a 1-2 start for the Green Bay Packers, which is not characteristic of them at all. Though they've seemed to drop their first games of the season the last couple of years now. It seems to be tradition, and then they end up being just fine, which doesn't seem to bode well for the Buccaneers this week.
Carmen, what have you made of Rodgers over the past few weeks? And I suppose it's a mixed opinion whether he was trying to encourage the wide receivers to be better in training camp. There's also people who feel that Aaron Rodgers has gone back down the road of being critical on players. It's a bit of a mixed bag. What's your thoughts on that situation?
Yeah, it's definitely something that he hasn't been used to the last few years. But at the same time, I mean, the Green Bay Packers were never really known for their receiver core until Davante Adams got there. And then Davante Adams just was the receiver core in and of himself. He had 25% of the team's touchdowns last season, and leaving that hole it's a big deal. They don't necessarily have the heir apparent to Davante Adams on the roster. And you saw that this last game where, after the disaster against the Minnesota Vikings, where they couldn't get absolutely anything going, uncharacteristic of Aaron Rodgers, they said, hey, you know what? We're going to need to pivot. We need to get 28 and 33 the ball. We need to get A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones more involved. You have this running back tandem that's just insane, both of them. And that's exactly what they did. And it's funny because the Bears knew exactly what they were going to do. We all knew exactly what they were going to do. But they didn't necessarily know how that was going to turn out. And I asked Aaron Rodgers after the game, I was like, was that also kind of more to take the pressure off these receivers as you kind of bring them along and get them a little bit more comfortable? And what he said was it really was about the 2 backs. And then he used it kind of as an opportunity to say that he didn't play well himself, especially in that second half. And he seems to kind of be coming out of that game despite the win with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. And again, I think that spells bad news for the Buccaneers.
Carmen, you talked about wide receivers. There are a few quite decent wide receivers in the NFC North. 2 of them happen to reside in Minnesota, in Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Yeah. But there is a very simple mantra for anyone who has ever even considered placing a bet in their entire lives. never bet on the Minnesota Vikings. And I'll repeat that again, never bet on the Minnesota Vikings. They are so inconsistent from the highs, obviously, of such a great divisional win in week 1 to a rather insipid performance, or be it a great defensive performance by the Eagles. What's your take on them and how they can go forward from here? As you say, everyone is 1-1. So
everyone's 1-1. The thing is, I mean, after the first week, and Minnesota, I think that also speaks to how good Green Bay is and how much Green Bay is kind of revered in this division, because Minnesota Vikings fans were just, I think they were so happy because they're like, we beat Green Bay. We're going to the Super Bowl because we beat Green Bay in the first game of the season. And to their credit, though, I mean, this offense looked unstoppable. Justin Jefferson looked unguardable. All that kind of stuff. And it all came crashing down against the Eagles as far as what they were able to do defensively against the Minnesota Vikings. But I think the other thing that we need to examine too is the fact that the Minnesota Vikings did themselves no favors on defense either. So the fact of the matter is, like, yes, Justin Jefferson was rendered ineffective by Darius Slay. That was something I don't think anybody was anticipating, because you don't think that he could be kind of guarded one-on-one. But at the same time, Minnesota was trotting out that too high cover 2 defense the entire game. They did not make any adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. And so the Philadelphia Eagles were able to take advantage of that. I was doing some of the next gen stats after the game, and Jalen Hurts was 23 of 25 inside 20 yards from the line of scrimmage, because that is the Minnesota Vikings were leaving that area of the field open the entire game. So it was a credit to the Eagles for taking advantage of what the defense was giving them as far as Minnesota goes, but they're going to need to do some adjustments on that side of the ball. And I think it does come with, it's a new coaching staff. It's a new regime in there. They're still kind of figuring things out and knowing exactly who they are as a football team. So I think that, for the first week kind of gave you a false sense of, oh, they've got everything figured out. No, there's no way they have everything figured out. And I don't think this speaks ill of Kevin O'Connell as a play caller. I don't think this speaks ill of even the defense. I think they're going to go back and look at that and be like, yeah, no, we need to make some adjustments.
I don't want to go too far away from the NFC North, Carmen, but from watching the NFC this season, it definitely seems maybe a bit weaker than the AFC, obviously, because you got powerhouses and the Bills and the Chiefs for to start off with. But even, has there been one team outside of the NFC North in the NFC that has made you think, wow, I've been really impressed with them so far? Because you mentioned the Eagles there, like Jalen Hurts the other night, like looking at the way that Eagles offense played and the fact that they really just took over in that second half, especially without scoring any points, which is even more crazier. Their schedule over the next few weeks is favorable.
It's so easy.
Yes, it's so easy, isn't it? They should be going 6 or 7-0, shouldn't it?
Oh my gosh! And if they don't, then I think you're going to know that they're really not that great of a team, because they do. They have the second easiest schedule in the NFL. The Eagles do. But I mean, that being said, again, I really like what they were able to do against the Vikings, because I think that they were taking what the defense gave them and they were playing to their strengths. I think Nick Sirianni is a really, really good play caller. The way that he kept Minnesota's defense on its heels, just by changing up the things and the looks that he was giving them and the different things, like you never knew what Jalen Hurts was about to do, if he was going to tuck the ball, if he was going to throw it. That offensive line too, I can't say enough about it. It might be the best in football. They have no real weaknesses on that offensive line, and the entire offense kind of runs through that, especially with how versatile that offense is. Outside of the Eagles, I mean, you got to talk about the other. There's only 6 2-0 teams in the National Football League right now, and one of those teams is, weirdly enough, the New York Giants. So Brian Daboll is doing good things in New York. He's dancing to Juicy in the locker room by Biggie Smalls. He seems to have the buy-in of his players. I don't know how long this necessarily keeps up for the Giants, but I think that you have to give them a little bit of a hats off. They've had little to celebrate these last few years, and it's really, I mean, they're, again, talk about doing what's working for them. I don't think Daniel Jones has been particularly impressive, but they're still figuring it out and they're eking out these wins, and hats off to the New York Giants.
Cameron, I suppose week 1 of the season was billed as revenge week, and we ended up with Pete Carroll enjoying his win over Russell Wilson, and we've seen various Seahawks luminaries kind of basking in that in the past couple of weeks. But obviously this week sees Lovie Smith go back in to Chicago. Slightly different reception, I imagine Lovie will get. But what are your expectations around this Texans team and going up against the Bears?
Well, I mean, really, Lovey, he brought this team the closest that they've been in my lifetime to a Super Bowl. So he's still very much well liked, I believe, here in this market amongst Bears fans. They want him to do well. Everyone talks about how majestic his beard is, that white beard against his brown skin. It's just, it's regal. But I mean, that being said, he is 0-2 against the Bears in his career when he's coached against them. So as a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as the head coach there, went 0-2 against them. That being said, Houston owns the all-time series against the Bears. They're 4-1 against the Bears. Last game that they played in 2020, the Bears completely clobbered them. But again, there's a lot that's new, including a quarterback, including a new regime change here in Chicago. And I think that the Bears are very much still trying to figure things out. And I mean, Justin Fields had 11 pass attempts in the game against the Packers. He's only had 28 pass attempts, I believe, this season. So he has less pass attempts than every other team has completions. So every other team has had more completions than he's had pass attempts so far this season. And you need to figure that out with him because you need to know if he can throw the ball. And the Houston Texans kind of present that opportunity because they're letting up the second most yards overall as a defense. I believe the sixth most yards overall, passing yards overall, when I was looking at the stats. So now you have the opportunity. I get, you're playing in a monsoon, week 1 for the Bears. Week 2, you ran into the Packers and they ran 41 offensive plays. That was it because Green Bay stayed on the field with those running backs. So now it's like, all right, you have the opportunity. I'm not panicking yet, the fact that Justin Fields hasn't really thrown the ball. But if he doesn't throw the ball against the Texans, I'm going to start, the conspiracy theories are going to start. Like, what do the Bears know that we don't about Justin Fields and why aren't they letting him throw the ball? But that being said, Houston's not going to roll over. They're a good team. Lovie Smith always coaches these guys hard. He's a really good coach. The players like playing for him. Both these guys are defensive-minded head coaches coming into this game. Lovie obviously running a very similar system. They both run 4-3s. And it's going to be interesting to see which one wins out. The Texans really aren't doing too bad. I mean, they're 1-1. Just like the Bears are, and they're coming off a bad loss as well. So both of these teams have a lot to play for.
Carmen, I didn't think I'd be asking you questions about Bruce Arians again, but I have to bring it up. He rocks up on the sideline on Sunday, antagonising players, and it came out yesterday that they said there wasn't enough seats up in the press box, and he was the one that had to take the sideline view. It's a bit of a strange one. Like Todd Bowles is trying to get grips with I know it's not the new team essentially, but he's the new head coach, and obviously it's his team now. Were you surprised to see him there? Is there a case of undermining the new head coach? I know they won the game, but they haven't got off to the best starts offensively.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But no, it's not a matter of undermining. That's kind of stuff is actually more common than you'd think. So usually Bruce is in a box or in a booth, which is in the press box, or he's put in a suite. Well, the Saints, being the division rivals and the difficult kind of team that they are, said, no, we don't have room for you, so you can sit in the press box. If you thought Bruce was bad on the field, you don't want Bruce in the press box. Like, full stop. You do not want him around reporters during this game. You do not there is a no cheering policy in the press box. You cannot be loud. You cannot do anything. That is not something that Bruce Arians subscribes to during a football game. So there was really no other option than to put him on the field. And usually, I mean, there's a ton of guys on the bench, right? And he's no stranger to being on the field. Him and Todd Bowles have a great relationship. That was never, but yeah, I mean, he's much more hot-headed than Todd is. Todd is very much more level-headed, but I think it was a bit of deja vu, kind of him being on the sidelines and him yelling his head off, and he's screaming at the ref, and he's telling Mike, like, look at your boy, what he's doing to Brady, and just started the melee, but he got a very strongly worded letter. And I think that's probably the last you'll see of him on the sidelines. And I think that was going to be the only time you're going to see him on the sidelines anyway. That's kind of what's missing from this narrative is that's not something normal. That was the Saints being difficult, quite honestly, which they did across the board. My trips to New Orleans were never good ones up there. They made sure every level of the organization was made uncomfortable in that arena or in that stadium. So it's Bruce being Bruce. I don't believe that Mike Evans should have been suspended for that. I think that there's been a lot more egregious things that have happened that have gone unsuspended. But I do think the fact that this wasn't Mike's first offense when it came to Marshawn Lattimore probably played into all of that. But no one's going to be mad at Mike. I mean, yeah, you're missing him for this game, but no one's going to be mad at Mike for coming to the defense of his teammate.
Carmen, I love the point about not cheering in the press box. That applies even if your double bet on Jalen Waddle scoring in Wembley comes up, or scoring in Tottenham comes up. Brian, sitting beside Brian.
That was an outdoor press box. I mean, it was mad.
Well,
Yes, your press boxes. So when I was over there with the Bucks and I was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I loved it because I felt like I was in the crowd. You guys have the benches or the desks like within the crowd. It's outdoors, and so I was like, oh, maybe I can get away with a little bit of, because usually I'm literally sitting on my hands. I have no poker face. I can't play it cool. I'm usually sitting on my hands. I'm actually biting my tongue to keep from cheering and doing things. I stomp my feet a lot. So in London, it was a lot easier because no one could hear me stomping my feet, and I even let out a little yelps.
Cameron, I'm glad you're praising the Giants because I'm a Giants fan, and I will be in the media with the guys in a few weeks' time when we play the Packers. So it's going to be a difficult afternoon. If the Packers play well, on the flip side, if we're playing well, it's still going to be difficult because I won't be at the cheer.
Because you won't be able to cheer. I know that's the drawback of covering these games as sports media, but it means that you get to be there and you get to be paid to cover these games, which is pretty cool too.
And as well as that, when the Giants play badly, Brian won't be able to swear quite as much as he would like to. But we're talking about that conflict, that challenge, and I'm really curious about this because, look, we try our best to stay fair and balanced on this show. Like Colin and Michael do their best to say nice things about the Raiders. Brian loves saying lovely things about the Cowboys and the Eagles. And of course, I adore the New York Jets with all my heart and soul. But how do you find it now in a professional context, in your role, being a Chicago native, being a Bears fan for covering all those teams in such a historic and historically competitive division with all those great rivalries?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I think I cling to the most, though, is watching this division in its entirety and just having a reverence for the tradition that exists. I mean, this is, if you're going to put a founding franchise or founding division label on any of the divisions, it's the NFC North. The teams have been around the longest. They have the most storied rivalries and stuff like that. So it's a little bit easier to kind of grab onto that and be a little bit more objective if you're really just kind of focused on the tradition. But it's been an adjustment. I'm not going to lie to you guys, just because when I was with the Buccaneers, I was a team employee. And so I never really had to pretend to be objective. I got to be subjective. I got to be a fan. And I leaned very much into that because A, the team was just really easy to root for. And B, I mean, I knew these guys. I was in the building with them every day. I had to see them every day, win or lose. And so I wanted them to win. It made my job so much easier when they won. So it's been a bit of an adjustment for me because my job isn't really made any easier or more difficult depending on how these teams are, because I have 4 teams now that I have to cover. And I think I just kind of pull back and really appreciate the sport in general. And again, just the historic nature of this division, and then getting to have the context of, growing up and watching this. I had a moment when I'd never been to a Bears-Packers game before. And so this last weekend, it was my first live game for Fox Sports that I got to go to. And it was Bears-Packers in Lambeau. And that literally, I have a bucket list on my phone. I have a notes app. And I have all these sporting events on it that I want to go to. And that was on it. That's been on it since I was little. And so to go to that, you kind of have a moment. And then you got to put your professional face back on and just be like, okay, well, I'm here to cover the game. And then you just kind of dive into the stats and you call on everything you learned in journalism school. At least I do. But yeah, no, I mean, I also think, though, people appreciate some authenticity as well. And as long as it's not, you're not going after any of these guys personally or whatever and saying, F the Packers or F the Lions or whoever it is. I'm not going to go so far as to do that. But I mean, I inject a little bit more of my fandom, I think, in my work more than most. But I think that's also what makes me a little bit more relatable.
Very, very quick fire final round because I know you're really busy. Just last one for me anyway, Carmen. 2 NFC North teams playing in London over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Vikings in week 4, Packers in week 5. Yep. Are you going over? Is there any plans at the moment to head over? And if not, Fox has got the Super Bowl this year in Arizona, so we'll definitely see you there, maybe.
Yeah, you'll see me at the Super Bowl. The nature. So I got the job just 2.5 weeks ago now. So there's a lot of logistical things that have to happen in order to make a trip like that. And there was just no time to do that, nor do I know if there was the budget or not. But I do have a travel schedule. I'm going up to Green Bay, I think 3 more times this season, going to Detroit, I'm going to Minnesota, and then I've got the Bears in my backyard. So I'll be bopping around the division, but no, unfortunately I don't but I do think this is neither here nor there, but I think I will be out there in April. I'm going to come see my first EPL game. So I'm very excited about that.
Very good. Nice time of the year to be coming over as well. Karen, I suppose one of the talking points in relation to the draft was around who was going to go number 1 overall. And for a long time, it looked like Aiden Hutchinson was going to be that pick. It didn't end up being that way, but I think the Detroit Lions were very happy that he fell into their laps. And my goodness, he had quite the performance despite being double teamed last weekend.
Yeah, there was one of the guys, Seth, he's an ESPN stats and researcher, and he always posts these really fun graphs. And he just released one today that I commented on because it showed the amount of double teams by, I think, that was the x-axis and the y-axis? I'm not a math person. But it was the amount of double teams versus like pass rush success rate or win rate. And Aiden Hutchinson is being double teamed as much as Nick Bosa is as a rookie. And so I think you need to keep that in context when you say, oh, well, he didn't win that rep. He didn't win that rep. Well, he's being doubled all of the time. And then the fact that he was able to have 3 sacks, he's taking full advantage. He's very efficient with his wins, apparently. And I think that they're building that entire defense kind of around him. And he kind of makes that whole thing go. But he is absolutely as advertised. I mean, we all saw it on Hard Knocks about how much the coaches love him, about how hard he works. And how they're all like, yeah, he's exactly what, he was advertised as, which doesn't always happen. But he comes from the NFL pedigree. His dad played, and his family is very supportive of him. It's very clear. But I really like him. He's one of the reasons that I think the Lions aren't going to be the Lions this year. But then I also look on the other side of the ball. Amon-Ra St. Brown is really not getting the respect he deserves right now. And he's like one of the top leading receivers through 2 weeks at this point. And he's just absolutely crucial to that Detroit Lions offense. And Jared Goff, having a guy like that has really helped him. Jared Goff threw for 4 touchdowns last week. So I think it's going to be very interesting. They've got some really, really good pieces in Detroit. And I want to, I really caution people against making Detroit the butt of their jokes, because I don't think they're going to be a joke this year.
Cameron, I just want to pivot to a team in the NFC West. I know it's not your division, but 49ers have beaten the Packers 2 of the last 3 years in the playoffs, and that's been with Jimmy G. And obviously now he's back as quarterback. Your thoughts on that situation? Like, a lot of people this week, there's a lot of 49ers fans who speak to us on our show and feel that this is a better situation for the team as a whole.
Yeah, after the first game, people were calling for Jimmy G to go back in after Trey Lance. You had to give Trey Lance a try. You had to, and you didn't think you were going to get over the hump with Jimmy G, is what all of their actions up until now have showed. Keeping him on the team, though, I said this when they, decided to re-sign him, make him the backup, and then put the no trade clause in there. Although Jimmy can request to trade. It's him. They can't trade him without his permission. But that being said, I was like, I don't think you guys are sold on Trey Lance then. If you want to keep Jimmy on this roster, then you're not sold on Trey. And you're hedging your bets, and you're trying to see what he's going to be. And unfortunately, they're not getting that opportunity. So, it was just kind of a whirlwind of Jimmy, between coming from New England and then coming into the 49ers organization, and just the events that have happened in his career have been very, very interesting to me. But I don't know. We'll see, because it's still a really good team. 49ers are a really good team. And especially in a weakened NFC, he could be back in the playoffs. Jimmy's done it before. It's a very weird situation. I just never thought that they were sold on Trey Lance.
Jimmy G usually prompts one of my favorite trolls of Packers fans, and indeed Saints fans, Carmi, if you might be interested in it, which is that he does have double the number of Super Bowl rings that either Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees has, which is a nice one to float out there, of course, as a backup, which he was due to be this year. But speaking of Super Bowl rings, I mean, one thing we love, actually, we follow you on Twitter at CarmyV, and some of the stuff you come out was great. I remember, I think it was only the other night, it was like Monday Night Football Kirk is going to be Monday Night Football Kirk, kind of summed up the Vikings' performance pretty neatly. But talking of Super Bowl rings, with your time in the box, you have a Super Bowl ring.
I do. It's right here.
Yeah, you were sharing. Can you drop it down there? And you were sharing a story about someone running into you, seeing you wear your Super Bowl ring the other day.
There it is. Yeah. So I don't wear this, clearly. Like it's on my shelf. When people come over and they want to see it. This honestly should be at my parents' house because I was super stoked about it. It has my name on it, which in turn is my dad's name. Because I am not married yet. But I was really excited for him to have him be able to see something like that. But no, the very first time and pretty much the only time I've ever worn it was week 1 of the following season when the Bucs were opening as defending champions. We were encouraged to wear them. It was one of those things that you don't necessarily think twice about until later on. And there was a guy on the field and I was videoing some of the guys coming out. So I was trying to do my job. And he taps me on the shoulder and he goes, "Is that a Super Bowl ring?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Can I see it?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I showed it to him. He took a picture of it. And he's like, "So who's your husband?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, who's your husband? Whose ring is that?" And I was like, "I don't have a husband. This is mine." And he would just kind of looked at me and he kind of realized his mistake and whatever. But it was something that's happened, I get it, not necessarily. The only thing, the context I want to actually put around that story is that this guy worked for one of the major networks that was there. I won't call it out, but he was one of the camera runners. So he works in the industry. So usually for fans or anything like that, I get it. No one's going to expect, me to have a Super Bowl ring. But I thought, for people that are in the industry, I was like, I expect a little bit better of you. So that's why I kind of called him out on it, and it went viral. The whole exchange, and a bunch of people picked it up and stuff like that. But for the record, everybody in a Super Bowl winning organization gets a ring, and it's really cool, and you get your name on it. And it is something that, I will forever treasure, and now I get to have and all that kind of stuff. It's the benefit of working for a team. But now that I'm on the outside, no such luck anymore. But that's okay. I have one. That's all I need.
Yeah, I was in Denver for Sunday Night Football in 2016, and Robert Kraft came over to us. I've never told Mark this. Robert Kraft came over to us and gave my mate 2 of his rings he was wearing, and actually let him hold it, and he couldn't believe it. It was incredible. And yeah, I never seen that viral exchange. The one thing I'll say to end tonight's interview, Carmen, is who's your Premier League team? This is interesting.
So I think that you probably think it was Man United just because of the fact that
better be Man United, Carmen, because I'm a Man United fan. So
I won't lie to you and tell you that I have an EPL team. I don't. If I had to, I would love to see Man United. I would love to see Man City. I actually have gotten to meet Cristiano Ronaldo before. That was probably the most starstruck I've ever been. I was an intern for the Rodgers, and he came to a game and had a catch with Yasiel Puig, who was a rookie that year. But it was wild. So I followed Ronaldo probably more than anybody else. But no, I'm going to go over and I'm going to see Arsenal, Liverpool, or Liverpool, Arsenal. I don't know who I'm going to root for. I don't know if I should just wear black.
Just wear black and just. Yeah.
I'll help you. I'll help you. Support Arsenal. They're based in London. Historic team, brilliant. So much like the Bears in terms of the history and the success, and over time. Actually, we've been more successful than the Bears, but support Arsenal. You'd be on good stand.
The only caveat to this is the reason I'm also going. My boyfriend is going to be supporting Liverpool because he knows people that work for Liverpool. I think work for Liverpool, and so that's kind of his in to this game. But that being said, I don't think that he's sold on Liverpool either. So maybe I'll wear black. And. Yeah.
Steer him the right way. Before we let you go, though, I mean, I'm sure you haven't done a Robert Kraft and ever given your Super Bowl ring to someone else, like Michael described. But I'm just wondering, Michael, your friend, did he do a Vladimir Putin and suggest that he'd been giving it to him as a kid?
He actually told me this a year ago. I never knew that happened, and I now know. But yeah, that happened. I've got images of him wearing the rings on the field, and it was now I think about it, it was pretty crazy. But Carmen, seriously though, as somebody that wants to go to see Arsenal play at Tottenham next Saturday in London, if anyone's watching this, your boy needs 2 tickets. Thank you very much, Carmen. Seriously, you're one of the original OGs, one of the original people that came on this broadcast before it sort of like honestly like took off. So we massively appreciate your support for coming on then, now, and hopefully into the future. And obviously, massive congratulations and very, very best luck for your role with Fox. We know we'll see you in Arizona, whether it's on Radio Row or on the field, or Brian will be trying to get in outside going, Carmen, can you let me in, or something will be like that. But massively appreciate it, Carmen. Thanks so much.
No, anytime, guys. Seriously, I love being on with you guys, and it's awesome to see all the support and everything for this sport, this silly sport, all the way across the pond. So thanks so much for having me. I'll be on anytime.
See you again soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. That was awesome. Carmen Vitali, previously with the Bucks, now with Fox Sports. Give her a follow on Twitter at CarmyV. Carmen, thank you so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate it. And I do need tickets for that game next Saturday. Colin, you're in London next Saturday, aren't you?
I am.
Okay. Well, if Mark Cockerell is the bigwig that he is and the big Arsenal fan, I'm sure he'll get us a few tickets. I just seen it. So
I'm sorry, Michael. I'm up in the box, so I can't deal with normal tickets.
Okay,
I'm up
no
in the
worries.
box for it.
Thanks.
Sorry,
I'll remember that in February. Thanks for the comment, folks. We'll read them out at the end. And just there was a question they're saying, what's her Twitter handle? Carmen's Twitter handle at Carmy CARMIEV. And this marks the end of the podcast segment because I've got OCD. Okay, let's have a detailed 13 or 14 minute discussion around the biggest Thursday night football game in the season. A hell of a game. This is so big that it's taken me so long to put the graphic on the screen. Here it is, Steelers against the Browns. Now, Colin, Steelers very, very poor offensively against the Patriots at the weekend. I watched some of the film back on Tuesday, and it's difficult for them to not just to get the ball down the field, but they're not being that effective on the run either. Mitchell Trubisky coming out of the pocket is non-existent, and it's a bit concerning. The Browns, on the other hand, where do we start with the Browns? I mean, in terms of their on-field situation, what's your thoughts on this game on Thursday night, man? What do you think?
Yeah, this is two teams who are in desperate need of a quarterback. Realistically, for the Steelers, Mitchell Trubisky is not the answer, and I wonder how much longer he will be the starter there. Mike Tomlin generally protects players, but they're not going anywhere. I saw a stat earlier that the Steelers are averaging 255 yards of total offense per game, whereas the Browns are averaging 205 yards rushing per game, which is quite something. The Steelers have a host of weapons, and if they only had a quarterback who could actually throw the ball and get it downfield, they might be capable of doing something. It's frustrating. It has to be for Steelers fans to know the weapons that you have, but you're just not going anywhere. And is Pickett going to be the answer? Mike Tomlin obviously is a fantastic coach, but this is the issue in the NFL in 2022. If you do not have a quarterback who can move the ball down the field, then you are in serious trouble. The Browns, it's going to be for them about concentration. This is a team who realistically threw the game away. Look, the Jets, kudos to them for playing to the end, but the Browns, I mean, they decided after the Chubb scored, that was it. They could go back to the locker room and forget about it. I think this, for me, will probably have woken them up, and for that reason, I don't expect this to be a high-scoring game. This could be very similar to the Seahawks-Broncos in week 1, where neither side goes above 16, 17 points. Therefore, I'm going to go with the Browns to win it.
And you're talking about heating up the offense, heating up the game. It's hard to heat up things at the minute, Brian, isn't it?
Wait, they used to offenses
in the south, or anything good going on down there at the minute? If you want to.
Well, the heat is on Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator of the Steelers, because like Combs alluded, this offense hasn't done anything in the opening 2 games, by and large, and it's not expansive at the moment, and there is players there. The struggles, there's already conversation. You said about when is Kenny Pickett going to play. We've had mixed opinions on this show around whether he'll play this season, when he'll come in. We've all made our suggestions. Well, already the narrative is out there that after this game, they've got 10 days before they play the Jets at home. And there's already conversation around, is this the ideal time to bring him in? Because they've got 10 days to prepare against a team that, with the exception maybe of last week's, heroic performance and win, that the Steelers, even with the current situation, would be capable of winning that game at home. And this maybe is the right time to bring him in. A lot will depend on how this offense plays on Thursday night, but I struggle to see how this offense can do a lot against a Browns defense, which they look. I'm going to write off the last 2 minutes last week. It was a meltdown. There was blown coverage, but by and large, this defense on their day can play a lot better. And I look at the Steelers defense. Yeah, they had a really good game in week 1. They had 6 sacks, but then how much of that was down to the erratic play of the offensive line with the Bengals last weekend? Without Watt, they didn't do very much against the Patriots offensive line, which is serviceable, and they did a good job to maintain Mac Jones in terms of keeping him up. I'm with Colin on this. I think the Browns, it won't be an attractive game. It'll be nip and tuck potentially to the 4th quarter. I think the Browns will pull away or win by a field goal.
So Mitch Trubisky is actually an Ohio boy. He's from Northeast Ohio. Obviously, it's the first Steelers-Browns games without Ben Roethlisberger, who has dominated this fixture last while, also an Ohio boy. And Trubisky's played in a historic rivalry before, obviously Bears-Packers, and now he gets to play in one of the other historic rivalries. The reality is, I'm with the guys. I'm not sure if he'll see the second game in this series, though, and he'll ever play a second game. It has been nothing short of dire, the Steelers' offensive performance the first couple of weeks. I mean, there are very few teams that are down there in the bottom with them. The Patriots are as well. Their offensive performance hasn't been anything great. But Trubisky in particular, he's 32nd in terms of yards per attempt, in terms of yards thrown, in terms of all the accelerated stats. They don't have a downfield threat. They're not throwing the ball out. They simply don't have any explosion. They're relying very heavily on Najee Harris, and everybody knows that. So he's being bottled up. And George Pickens, for all of our excitement, for everybody's excitement about him in preseason so far, has 2 catches for 23 yards. Now, can they suddenly unleash the beast, especially against the Browns, who had their breakdowns in week 2? They had their breakdowns in week 1 as well. It was a long touchdown in week 1 against them as well. So are the Browns secondary, even with Denzel Ward back there, open for exposure? If you're looking for hope, Steelers fans, Jadeveon Clowney is out, so therefore you can double Myles Garrett to your heart's content all time. 1 sack away he is from being the Cleveland Browns' all-time leading sack leader. For the love of God, take the under on this game. For the love of God, take the under if you dare bet. And bear in mind, Jack Conklin as well is coming back for the Browns to maybe even further shore up that offensive line. Overall, there's Nick Chubb on one side of the field. There's a better running game on one side of the field. There's a better offensive line on one side of the field. And that side of the field, at all of those occasions, is the Cleveland Browns. But it's going to be tight. It's going to be ugly. But I take the Browns to nip it in.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. I looked at the game tape from that Steelers-Patriots game, and I know, Mark, you'll probably have watched it. Would you have agreed, Mark, that if the Steelers had an efficient quarterback, they would have scored more than 14 points? Do you think that's a fair point to make, like last week, in terms of the stats that they have, especially the receivers? The highest receiving total was 57 yards from Deontay Johnson on Sunday, and that comes with an inefficiency at quarterback with Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, Mac Jones had a solid game, 250 odd yards. And
I think it's a fair statement, but I think there's a question about the offensive game plan, the trust behind Trubisky. Like, they don't seem to be taking the deep shots. They don't seem to be trying to stretch the field. Is that because they don't believe Trubisky can? Do they don't think the offensive line will hold up, or are the receivers not getting open? But I think it's a combination of multiple factors there.
Okay, that's a fair point. Sounds good. The reason that I'm picking the Browns for this game is because the Steelers' offense, and as everyone sort of, this is a crap thing about going last. Everything's already said unless somebody forgets something. Like, I might go first from now on. I might finish off for Sunday. I'm only joking. The offense isn't good enough for Pittsburgh, and that's obvious. But more so, the confidence and the sheer athleticism of Mr. Trubisky when he gets the ball. His decision-making skills aren't fast enough, and that then means that the Steelers don't get down the field efficiently enough. They're going to struggle against this Browns team because the defense will come at them. And frankly, I'm concerned about the offensive line and the protection that Mitchell Trubisky has. That being said, I think that it'll be a low-scoring game on Thursday. And if anything, feel for me on Thursday night when I have to work during this game, because this is going to be potentially one of the worst games of the season on Thursday Night Football. And they don't have an answer at quarterback because and we can maybe talk about this to extend our preview on this game if you want for a quick minute. Kenny Pickett is not a good enough quarterback, lads, in the league.
But he hasn't played yet, so we don't really know.
But he's not ready to play yet. And we can have this argument, well, you have to put him in and all this. He's not ready to play in the league. He needs a year behind him to come in and see the crack.
But Michael,
look, hold on, just 2 seconds, right?
Sorry.
He doesn't have that much experience behind him, and frankly, he's not ready to go into a game, for example, against Cleveland, or they've got a couple of beaches of games over the next few weeks. They've got the Bills in 2 weeks' time. Somebody like Kenny Pickett is not ready to go in against those sort of defenses. It's not going to happen. So for anyone to say, oh yeah, I think they've massively missed the ball. I don't know. I mean, you can gamble on Mr. Trubisky, but to bring in a guy that they said that they were all in on, and Kenny Pickett, they only brought him in because he went to Pitt. That's the only reason they brought him in. If he didn't go to Pitt, and Mark is smiling, I'm damn right, lads. I know I am. There was better quarterback. Why didn't they bring Malik Willis in?
Malik Willis went in the third round, Michael.
Matt Corral. They're better quarterbacks as far as I'm concerned. Like, I watched tape and all, and I don't think Kenny Pickett's good enough to play in the league.
When we did our season preview,
that to be proven.
When we did our season preview, when we made these bold statements for the year, I said this will be a losing record for the first time in Mike Tomlin's career as a Steelers head coach, because at some stage they will draw a line under Mitch Trubisky very quickly, because I said Trubisky played 7 snaps last year for the Bills and he was the highly sought after free agent quarterback. He hadn't done anything since he was in Chicago to justify the teams that were going after him. They're going to make a decision at some stage. How are we going to know if this guy is the answer in the future unless we play him? And that's what, like, Kenny Pickett is going to be the next quarterback. Whether I agree, you agree, or the boys agree, he will be given an opportunity to make a claim to be the next starter. And if it doesn't work out, then obviously they will have to readdress the situation. But he will play sooner rather than later. And I can understand why and agree that Buffalo in 2 weeks is daunting. But the Jets on Sunday week isn't daunting at home. And they might say, you know what, let's give him the opportunity to play then, and then see how that game goes, and move from there and see what the next steps are. But again, this is all. We could all be very wrong. We have been here before on a Thursday night show where we've all selected one team only for the other team to go and win the game, and he could ball out. I'd be very surprised if he does.
This is the one game where on Thursday night. And sorry, Mark, I don't mean to talk over you. Sorry, this is the one game, and you can maybe go forward on this point, that I do think it, like, why I think Cleveland will win. I think it'll be very close because I think they're both. I mean, Pittsburgh aren't great with Mr. Trubisky at quarterback, so I think it'd be like a field goal on Thursday night.
That's the thing. I think it's going to be close. I am laughing, as Brian says, like, we have at times, especially on a Thursday night game when it's a divisional game, and sometimes on a short week you can have strange results. There's more than a few times all 4 of us have been for one team, and fans of the other team have screenshotted it and sent it back to us afterwards. So maybe this is one of those occasions. But just to take up your Kenny Pickett point, Michael, I'm going to disagree and agree with you. I'm going to disagree they only picked him because he went to Pitt, because I don't think they would, put an NFL franchise at risk for that reason. But here's the bit I'd agree on. The Steelers still remember back. Remember the historic and the franchise memory that's there, because obviously the same ownership and the consistency all the way along. They still remember back to the 1983 draft. And you know what they did in the 1983 draft? They didn't draft the quarterback from Pitt. They passed on him. That quarterback, of course, was Dan Marino. And they regretted that decision for a long, long time afterwards. They also didn't get a chance to draft Tua, who just equaled Dan Marino's franchise record for TDs. So it all comes full circle. But maybe there's something to your point. Maybe they thought we're not going to miss out on another Pitt candidate who could come along. And so let's right the wrongs of the past in some way.
Time will tell. I'll never forget your face whenever I said that. That was nice. Been very quiet so far tonight, Mark. You're very feisty on Monday night. Into that in a bit. Okay, if you want to listen to the rest of our previews, I think coming up either on Thursday or Friday on the podcast network. We're going to look over a couple of week 1 games here as well for Sunday as well. You can check them out. Really appreciate the support of the podcast. It's unbelievable. Thank you so much, folks. Chat to you again soon. Okay. Anish, Saints Panthers week 1 Sunday. This is a game and a half. I can't wait to see some of these picks, lads. I've seen some of these picks. Sweet Jesus of Nazareth, folks. If you want to have a bit of crack this weekend, watch this broadcast on Friday night, because you may be laughing all the way to Mass on Sunday morning at some of the picks. Maybe on my part. Saints Panthers column. Saints only scored 10 points against the Bucks last week. Jameis Winston has 3 interceptions. Baker Mayfield's trying to prove a point. He lost to the Giants last week and only put up 14 points or 16 points against the Giants. Something's got to give for Carolina. The Saints need to get a win. What's your thoughts on this game on Sunday, mate?
Well, the Panthers have lost 9 games in a row, going back to last season. So Matt Rule is on a serious losing streak. Under Matt Rule, the Panthers are 1-25 when an opponent scores 17 points or more. 1-25. All you have to get is to 17 points in the NFL in 2022, and you will almost certainly beat Matt Rule's Carolina Panthers. I would imagine Matt Rule is not long for the NFL world, whether he ends up in the Nebraska job or maybe Nick Saban, rescues another career and gives him an offensive assistant job, perhaps at Alabama. The Panthers are also the only NFL team with not a single takeaway through the first 2 games. The Panthers need to get out from the Matt Rule era. They need to clean house in terms of the quarterbacks. The end of the season cannot come soon enough for the Panthers. Realistically, it is about some of their young players and bringing them on. They have some nice pieces, but without a good head coach and without a good quarterback, the Baker Mayfield redemption tour just has not got up and running. Yeah, they'll win some games this season, but the billionaire investment banker or hedge fund manager wants them to be a serious powerhouse. They're not going to be that this year. They're going against the Saints team, who equally have had their struggles, but I think the Saints have a serious defense. I also think they lost their way after the fight the other day. So I don't expect this will be a particularly pretty game, but I think the Saints have just enough with Alvin Kamara coming back, and they will get the victory.
Colin, there is one bright spot for the Panthers. They've set an NFL record last weekend on defense. They haven't conceded an opening drive touchdown for 19 games in a row. But that's as good as it gets, really. Yeah, and they do have some bright spots on defense. You're right. Brian Burns had 2 sacks last week. He looks like a really standout player. But they lost their main player in Reddick, going to the Eagles in the offseason. That was a year's loss for them. And things haven't really improved offensively. We talked about how they nearly won the game week 1, but for 3 quarters of the fourth game, they were non-existent. Baker Mayfield was held in check, and he was held in check for large parts of the game last week. Couldn't deal with the pressure. He couldn't deal with players from the interior coming at him. He couldn't deal with blitzes. He got outside a couple of times on the perimeter and was efficient in their own game, but apart from that, he did very little. And the flaws that I saw coming out of Cleveland, and I know people said, he might have a bit of a standout year and he might rebound from a difficult time in Cleveland. It hasn't materialised so far, and I don't think it's going to materialise in this game. The Saints lost the game last week 20-10, and we saw James Winston turn the ball over 3 times, and when they did get a great play to Olave, unfortunately he fumbles at the back end of the play, and there goes an opportunity to get right back in the game. So there still is some bright spots for the Saints despite a difficult defeat, and I think the Saints will take care of the ball this week, take care of business and win this game.
That's the Saints have literally the walking wounded at quarterback. James Winston's got a broken back, quite realistically. That's the problem. They did nothing against Tampa Bay. Winston looked a shell. Their offense was putrid. The good thing for the Saints fans is their defense looks seriously legit, which they kind of needed a bounce back game after a pretty poor performance in week 1 against the Falcons. Let's remember, the Saints only won that with a pretty amazing comeback in the fourth quarter there. I still have belief that the Panthers will be greater than the sum of their parts at some point during the season. I do think Baker Mayfield can contribute. I definitely think Christian McCaffrey can contribute. But if I'm being brutally honest, I think the biggest detriment in Carolina, I hate to call out coaches, is Matt Rule. And I think he is outmatched in this particular job, and he's being shown up on a regular basis. Column stat, realistically, guys, says it all in terms of the state of Carolina Panther football at this point in time. I do think it's going to be a bit closer. I do worry about Jameis Winston, his long-term health in relation to it. But put Taysom Hill in there, run some Wildcat, give him the option to pass a couple of times. They should have more than enough as long as the Saints defense perform like they have been the last 5 quarters at least. So I go Saints as well.
Well, for anyone listening, I just put the wrong graphic up, or the other one's disappeared. I must have deleted it by accident. I'm picking the Panthers to win this game because in week 1, Baker Mayfield had 235 yards passing. Granted, they lost the game, but he was effective. He got them down the field, almost won the game. You can see the confidence there. The home team, the home crowd is a massive factor in this game on Sunday. Like, I don't think you can't pinpoint the effectiveness of that home crowd in Carolina. They have to win this game. How they didn't win last week? Well, Baker had like 100 yards less passing, but then Christian McCaffrey, who only had like 30 or 40 yards rush, and he's the bell cow in week 1, then had 100 last week. So they need to find a mix where they can at least get to like 75-ish% each, and they should be able to win a game. I think the home crowd will be a factor here. I think Matt Rule will be out by Halloween, but they'll win a game this week, and it'll be against the Saints team that, frankly, it's like watching Kirk Cousins with Jameis Winston. Suddenly they do something half decent, and then they do something else. I think it'll be a tight one. I'm picking the Panthers for the crack, because why not? The division they're in, anyone can win it. It's not bad, because the Bucs are not special, lads. As it stands, defense is good. As it stands, Cole Beasley going to the Bucs. We'll talk about that on Sunday. Okay. Texans Bears. Now this is a game for the books. I want to apologise to people on this broadcast on Monday night. I called the Bears trash, like the team, like the current situation trash. They're worse than that, Colin, in my opinion. And maybe I should have been more clear.
Well, they've been left with a mess from the previous regime, absolutely. And in fairness, like when I look at my own team and I look at the past few years, and the fact that the Broncos have lost more home games despite having such great home advantage. Teams, it ebbs and flows, and certainly the Bears are in a bad position. They did get that win, obviously, against the 49ers to start the season, but the Bears have had 28 passing attempts. They've had 15 completions. 15 completions. It's nearly half the next team, which is actually the 49ers, who have 28 completions. So they have as many completions as the Bears have passing attempts. The other stat that jumped out at me was that 55% of all the Bears' possessions so far this season have failed to gain a first down. So more than half the time that they have the ball, they go 3 and out. Talk about 3 and out champs. They're going up against an opponent, though, who are only just above them, because the Texans go 3 and out on 44% of their possessions. So this could be a hard slog. I went back and forth on who was the more likely winner in this one. I do think Lovie Smith will have a point to prove, and I think the Texans have a bend don't break defense. I also think Stingley will have learned from that battle with Cortland Sutton. You could actually see him improve as the game went on. He was learning things that he should have done. I think this could be another one where there aren't a huge number of points scored, and it could absolutely come down to a field goal. It could go either way, but I'm going to say the Texans edge it.
Colin says he went back and forth in this game. This one is quite clear in my mind. The Bears are going to win this game. I look at the defense of the Texans, and in particular against the run. They gave up 177 yards in week 1 to the Colts. Okay, fair enough, Jonathan Taylor. is a massive running back there. Then they gave up 149 to the Broncos last week. And I could see a scenario where two efficient running backs, in which the Bears have, in fairness, they have two running backs that are quite good. David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert had a really good game in week 1. And I think they'll lean on them too. It's a dual situation. We saw it last week with Gordon and Williams with the Broncos. And whilst they might be better than what the Bears have, I still see the same scenario. And just offensively for the Texans, Columns called out some of the scary stats that they've had, in terms of how poor it is. They haven't gone over 300 yards offensively in both games. Over the course of 2 games, they still haven't even gone over 300. I think the Bears will find a way. Roquan Smith hasn't practiced today, but he's still expected to be fine on Sunday. Robert Quinn had his first sack last week. I could see the Bears defense. And you're talking about home field advantages, Michael, with the Panthers. Well, in fairness to Soldier Field, on their day, they can be a feisty crowd. I imagine they'll be up front on Sunday. And they'll be 2-1. And then they play the Giants next week. So either the Giants are 3-1 or the Bears are going to be 3-1. That's if the Giants don't win on Monday.
Do you know, we were just talking about Thursday Night Football, and we failed to call out, of course, the appearance of Brownie the Elf on the halfway line. Yes, the psychotic brown leprechaun the Browns had decided to paint on their stadium. The last time we were in Soldier Field, obviously, was week 1 against the 49ers, where the Bears decided to turn the field into a swimming pool. And for much of this game, I'm seriously hoping that the linesmen have just, the groundsmen have decided to paint lovely little pictures on the field, maybe a nice different logo at midfield or something like that to give us actually something watchable, because this game's going to be putrid. A lot of the performance is probably going to be putrid. There might be some good defense. I definitely think the Texans played the Broncos very hard and had really solid defense last week, albeit, as Brian has alluded to, there's a little bit of looseness, shall we say, in their run D. And the Bears' defense is certainly the best part of their game. I mean, it can't be as bad as their offense, let's put it this way. If I'm being brutally honest, the two most talented players on the field are certainly on the Bears side. Justin Fields has the potential to be electric, and David Montgomery is a stunning running back and opportunity. But I fear that very soon we're going to be praying for his release, his freedom, just like Colin had his petition about Allen Robinson for quite a while before it eventually occurred. I don't like saying this. The Chicago Bears are very close to Ireland. The McCaskey family obviously have a great connection with Ireland, and we love and adore the Irish and Chicago connections. But I fear that Lovie Smith is going in with revenge on his mind in terms of proving himself somewhat to Chicago. He has that Texans team playing hard, playing for him and playing well. And I feel the Bears season is going down the toilet quickly. A bit like the Jags a few years ago when they started winning one game and then lost 15 in a row. I'm not predicting 15 in a row, but in the tale of two bad teams in something that's going to be hard to watch in a very low-scoring game, I am going for the Texans in this game.
I will echo that about Chicago. I love the city. Wow, it's not going well. I love the city of Chicago. It's one of my favorite cities in the world, favorite city in America. And that's where it ends. Davis Mills has scored as many touchdowns this season, passing touchdowns, as Tom Brady. There's the stat. He had more passing yards in week 1 than Tom Brady. Do we keep? I'm only joking. It's obvious. They kept the Colts and the Broncos, two offenses that have not, shall we say, worked very well this season so far, and we'll not go into a different conversation. 20 points to 16 points respectively. You can only play what you're put up against on the field, and they've done well there in that sense. Davis Mills had 2 passing touchdowns week 1. No passing touchdowns last week, but still got 180 odd yards on the game. The Bears don't have an offense, and I'm going to go as far as saying, as far as I'm concerned, they won't score a touchdown on Sunday offensively. And for that reason, I'm picking the Texans in what will probably not be a memorable game. But we talked about it, and we got out of the way, and I hope Bears and Texans fans in Ireland enjoy it. In the final segment, we are going to talk about, if this was week -4 in the preseason, this would have been a hell of a game. You got Matt Ryan coming into Indy. I mean, everyone's pumped about Indianapolis. Can Frank Reich take the team to the next level with a quarterback that's been there and almost done it, 28-3, Abu? And I watched the All-22, or the Coach of 22 of the Jaguars game. Oh, it's over, isn't it? This is it. Does Matt Ryan play after this season if he continues on like this? Because it's hard. It was hard to watch.
Yeah, and that's the story of obviously the Colts QB. But for me, this game is about Patrick Mahomes, who is undefeated when playing in a dome. He's 6-0. He generally passes he averages over 300 yards, almost 340 yards. He's 15-2 touchdown to interception rating. There's also the fact that this game is in a dome. It's Patrick Mahomes in a dome. It's Patrick Mahomes against Gus Bradley's defense. He's taken him on 7 times. He has 17 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Last year, Gus Bradley was the defensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders. Mahomes put 41 points on them and then put 48 points on them. Gus Bradley's defense thus far this year, 72% completion rate, and that came against Davis Mills and Trevor Lawrence. This could not be more set up for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to put a beat down. Of course, that probably means it will be a trap game, but I think if I was to have any hope for the Colts in a trap game, it would be if they didn't have Gus Bradley as defensive coordinator. He is an Achilles heel. He seems unwilling to change his approach. If he is unwilling to do that, Patrick Mahomes is going to take advantage of it. I have seen no evidence that he is willing to change it. And for that reason, I am going to say that the Chiefs win this.
It's a bit like when Gus Bradley was in with the Raiders and the Chiefs played him, and he never went away from zero defense in the secondary. The Colts need to correct a few things, and I know Matt Ryan is getting all the grief and all the critics, but he says he's getting beaten up. The offensive line hasn't worked so far. Jonathan Taylor hasn't really progressed to what we saw last year, and you could put that down to the fact he's not getting the holes in the offensive line, which we saw last year, which was so constructive and giving him those opportunities, hasn't materialised yet. They have had a lot of injuries in terms of wide receivers who have been out, who look like they're going to return on Sunday. And I didn't think the Chiefs, I know it's a different week, but I didn't think the Chiefs were overly, I wasn't enamoured by their performance against the Chargers last week. The Chargers had the game there to win. They had that pick 6, which essentially reversed the whole psychology of how that game went. And we've seen teams in the past where they're written off 0-2. This week they're going to get completely burnt, and somehow they find a way to win. And I just have an inkling that this week. I think the Colts are going to find a way to beat the Chiefs on Sunday, and we'll be scratching their head on Monday how they got it done. We've seen it in the past. Teams just think it's going to be a blowout. The team riding high come in, and we've seen teams at 0-2 get desperate, and they have to win. And desperate teams somehow find ways to win. And I think we'll see a different performance on Sunday from a team that is railing, and we've seen it in the past where a team gets blown out the week before, somehow come back to find a way of winning. And if they win, it is a massive upset because they're going against arguably one of the best teams in the league, if not one of the best teams to potentially go and win the Super Bowl this year. But I just have a feeling that they're going to find a way on Sunday to scheme against this Chiefs offense defensively. The players come back off injury as well. I think Leonard has come back. There's a few players in the secondary, and they'll have a lot more players at their disposal to go and put points up, and they'll find a way to get over the line. So for me, I'm taking the shock. I'm going to Colts.
If you gents will allow me a little bit of cross-sport referencing for a moment. Very clearly, we're just talking about the Panthers. Matt Rule's derriere is feeling a little bit warmed. He is in the proverbial hot seat. If you don't mind, I'm thinking he's going to be a bit like Scott Parker very, very soon. Maybe the first coach fired from an NFL team this year. However, another coach that's certainly feeling the warmth around his rear is Frank Reich. And he could be the Thomas Tuchel, the shock firing that nobody necessarily predicted at the start of the year. Jim Irsay is not the most patient of people. He is not best pleased, you can well imagine. Scoring zip against the divisional rival, continuing the decline in Jacksonville is not a good sign. The Colts almost for the last few years we've had this pattern of the Dolphins and the Colts starting the season terribly and then getting a bit of momentum. Like last year, the Dolphins were 1-7 and they, soared back and nearly got a playoff spot at the end. They've decided this year to actually start well and avoid all that. That's a kind of a useful tool and idea in relation to it. But the Colts are continuing on this theme of let's just start late. Let's just lose a few games, give people a chance, and then try and surge back. The problem is so far they've shown no confidence in being able to surge back. Yes, they were missing Pittman last week. There's a legitimate piece. Alexa, for some reason, wants to talk to
Who are
me
you
here, guys.
picking, Mark?
So overall of this thing, when you think about Pittman being missing, you want to give some hope to the Colts. But the reality is...
Sorry, I didn't get that. The internet isn't reachable.
Alexa, turn off. There we go. Overall, the Chiefs. There we go.
Michael,
We were very lucky to have Chris Ballard on this broadcast at the end of August. Chris Ballard spent the entirety of the off-season shutting down reporters, and he did. You can go back and look at this. The Colts are a top-class organisation to deal with, and I hope we can have Chris on again, and we can have Frank Reich on, or anyone on, or Jim Irsay. But Chris Ballard did shoot down reporters on multiple occasions when he was asked about the depth of the team, and they now have an issue with the wide receiver core. Not just that, last week, statistically, going with next-gen stats in the NFL, the Colts targets had the least amount of separation of any group in the league, whereas Tyreek Hill had a separation average of 4.7 or 4.9, which is absolutely ridiculous, and that's a discussion for Sunday's broadcast. But more so, Matt Ryan looks old. Matt Ryan looks done, and I hope I'm damn wrong. But 6.5 points is beyond generous on the spread to a better. Bet responsibly. Do not listen to a word I'm saying. But I mean, it was free last week. It should be. You know, if we're looking at games last week with the Packers and the Bills at -10, this could be a cricket score. And I'll go as far as saying, if the Chiefs don't win this game, I'll not come on next week. Like, this is beyond a lock. The way that Matt Ryan played last week in terms of the yards of separation, the motion out of the pocket, his need to try and pressure plays when he didn't need to do so. There's only one quarterback that I've seen realms of that, and it was Peyton Manning in 2015, 2016. I think he's cooked. I think he's done.
Let's bear in mind that we all thought, at the start of the season, we all felt that he wasn't done and he would have a great season and the Colts would win this division. It's 2 games.
Yeah, but he's played 2 games, 4 quarters. He played barely any preseason, and I expected him to win the South. I thought the Titans would go down. They have so far statistically. Didn't expect the Jaguars to go up as much as they have. But if he continues to play at the average way in which he's playing in those 2 games, they might not win the game. He's been shocking, and we can sit here and say, "Oh, Pittman's out, Hines out." That's fine, and those guys can get open, but he's not even throwing the ball correctly.
But he's not getting the time because the offensive line has been crippled in the first 2 games.
Yeah, and that's a head coach and a GM issue as well. You know. Yeah.
But I think we'd see if we have a fair evaluation if he was stepping back into the pocket. See, everybody had this narrative that he'll go in there. He's been beaten up in Atlanta because the offensive line has been a pilot, for the past 5 years. And poor Matt Ryan, who's had a great career, has been crippled. If only he was playing for a team that could look after him and keep him upright. And the Colts offensive line had arguably been one of the best in the league for the past 5 years. So that's what we were all banking on. If the offensive line was playing really well for the first 2 weeks, and he was back in the pocket and he wasn't making the plays and the arm strength was looking poor, I'd say fair enough. Yeah, you're onto something. But we haven't seen that yet. I want to see Matt Ryan play a game where he's allowed to step up in the pocket. He's allowed to step back. He can move up in the pocket. He can make the throw. And if it's not working, then I'll say, yeah, fair enough. Right now, I don't believe we've seen that. I think we might get an opportunity to see that on Sunday.
But they're playing the Chiefs. All right. Look, anyway, it wasn't Hines. It was Pierce. Sorry, on the injury list. So apologies, folks. Any further comments to make on that? Or are we all going once?
Everybody thinks I'm bonkers here. I think.
I think that is fair play to you, sir. It'll make it a bit of crack on Sunday. But
I was going to say, if it had been the Chiefs' defense from a couple of years ago, where their biggest weakness was run D, I would have more faith in Brian's prediction there. Like, Jonathan Taylor is still going off at 5.4 yards per lick per attempt, but I just don't see him having the same level of success. I mean, maybe they can get there with a run D, but you're a brave man, Brian. That's what I'll say.
The Chiefs coming off a long off week as well for the Thursday night.
Crowd got to get into it early. Get behind the team.
Okay. Put them under pressure. Right. Apparently we have a question there in the show column. Do you have that question ready, or do you want me to look for the question? I'll put you on the spot here now. There's been questions and comments coming in all night. Just want to thank numerous people for their questions. Fred, Graham, Declan, Keith, Common the Great, Flinner, McNutty, nice name, L. De Bruyne, Flinner, McNulty again. The Irish NFL Show, BOL, Jeff Rossi, and that's it. Thank you all so much. Yeah, there's a question seen from Fred at the start. Let's see.
Yeah.
Sean Payton?
Yeah. Exactly. Will Sean Payton end up in Dallas? And I think
Next year.
it's a yeah. So Michael, you're saying yes next year?
I think I don't think Matt Rule will be in Carolina in a month, but I think Jerry Jones sort of knows he's not that stupid. Like, he's very self-centered and tight-lipped, but he's not going to fire McCarthy this side of Christmas, so he'll just wait and he'll pay Sean Payton off on what he's already probably on a nice healthy Fox Sports salary, and he'll go to Dallas and he'll win 7 games, and sure, we all know what the next part of it is. They're cooked.
Unless there's a shocking sack during the season, with a team that has an attractive, which Sean Payton would see as an attractive opportunity, I think it's Dallas next year as well.
Mark?
Sean Payton is 100% going to be a head coach at the Dallas Cowboys. The big question will be when, because I will say, and I think he could well be there next season, but if you're in Sean Payton's shoes, would you not want that roster a bit cleaned up, the salary cap a bit cleaned up, a better setup in relation to it, or a better control maybe over the roster, given that Stephen Jones really does make all the decisions in that regard? So at some point it will occur. Whether it's next year or not might depend more on Sean Payton's desire to take on one of the most challenging jobs in all of football.
You could offer him a Mars bar. You could offer him a Dairy Milk. You could offer him a Snickers. You could offer him a Nutri-Grain. You could offer him a Boost. Or you could offer him a bar of Bounty. Maybe he might take that. That's us, yeah. That's us.
I get to give my opinion on this. I'm gonna disagree with all of you. I think Sean Payton is far smarter than to go anywhere near the Dallas Cowboys when Jerry Jones is in charge. Michael, you were saying Jerry's smart. Jerry's a businessman, but Jerry lets his ego get in the way all too often. We've seen it time and time again. Some with Jimmy, where he promised Jimmy and then he backtracked on it, talked about how he wants Zeke. I think Sean Payton knows there is no way Jerry won't get involved. If he goes in there, it'll be quicker than a Jose Mourinho job at this point, because it just won't last. Sean Payton is going to be back in the NFL sooner rather than later. Some podcast came out today. He said if an interesting opportunity came up, he would take it. I have no doubt he will be back very soon. But Sean Payton, with the way in which he wants control, not a chance he goes near the Cowboys unless Jerry gets his $10 billion and somebody else comes in and takes over.
Well, if he does come in next offseason, and he's been given the reins to essentially make decisions, Zeke is gone. They've only got $10 million in salary cap at the moment based on overthecap.com for next season. So there's going to be some hard decisions ahead for the Cowboys next offseason anyway, but let's not worry too much about the next offseason. We're only at week 3 of this season. So anyway, Cowboys. Huh?
So I just want to say he needs an interesting opportunity, Colin. Give it 3 years, wait for Bill Belichick to finally retire in the Patriots, and then become the new Patriots head coach. From my lips to God's ears, please God.
And on that note,
that's us. We're back Friday night, 9:30 p.m., 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific, in case Mark's somewhere else in the world. Hopefully he turns up in time this week. Only joking. See you then. Good night. God bless. Thanks for all the comments. And enjoy this game tomorrow night. And do me a favour, folks. If you're watching this game tomorrow night, go and tweet me at Michael_NFL. I'm going to need, look at my eyes. Look at my eyes. I mean, Jesus. Good luck. Good night.